did not have the authority to impose them. We'll discuss this and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm guest host Doris Childress. We'll also talk with Hobby School of Public Affairs researchers about a new survey which found that the cost of living is the biggest economic concern for the majority of Houstonians.
Plus, Houston artist David McGee will tell us more about his art career and an upcoming exhibition dedicated to his work.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the purple box.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's global tariffs policy under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, directly rebuking a central part of Trump's trade agenda. Today's decision centers on wild fluctuations of tariffs imposed on countries around the world. The practice roiled U.S. businesses and prompted groups to legally challenge the tariffs under an emergency powers law as an overreach of presidential authority. Diane Swank, an economic advisor and chief economist at KPMG, says the ruling does not necessarily mean the end of Trump's tariffs.
We expect an executive order using other levers that the White House has that it can raise tariffs to reinstate any.
Well, President Trump's national campaign to promote his economic agenda took him yesterday to Rome, Georgia. That's where a special election was being held to fill the seat left vacant by Republican former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who resigned last month after clashing with the president over the Epstein investigation. Raul Bali with member station WABE has the latest.
Speaking at this steel processing plant, Trump focused much of his speech on his economic policy, including tariffs, taxes, and manufacturing. It included this claim.
You notice, what word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won affordability.
Trump also blasted the use of mail-in ballots and opposition of voter ID proposals. Several key races here have wide-ranging implications. The special election comes as Trump looks to shore up his razor-thin majority in the House with MAGA loyalists. And U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff will be fighting to keep his seat as the only Democratic incumbent on the ballot in a state won by Trump. For NPR News, I'm Raul Bali in Rome, Georgia.
British police have conducted a search where former Prince Andrew used to live as part of an investigation into alleged misconduct in public office and his friendship with the late-convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is the first senior member of the royal family in centuries to be arrested. He was released yesterday while under investigation. Here's NPR's Fatima Al-Qassar.
Photos of the former prince leaving a police station in the back of a car are plastered all over the British newspapers. Andrew spent 11 hours in police custody after he was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, which carries up to life in prison. Police say Andrew is still under investigation and is yet to be charged or exonerated. Meanwhile, British police are continuing to search royal residences, rifling through correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein to determine whether the former prince, who remains 8th in line to the throne, abused his role as a UK trade envoy by passing confidential information to the late sex offender. Andrew has always denied wrongdoing.
This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. A passenger that caused a disturbance aboard a Delta Airlines flight earlier this week will not face criminal charges after exhibiting aggressive behavior mid-flight. News 88.7's Matt Harrop reports.
Houston police say they made that decision to not charge the man after he received a mental health evaluation. Initial reports suggested that he may have been trying to breach the cockpit on the plane, but Delta Airlines later confirmed that he did not gain access. Both the crew and other passengers on board helped to subdue the suspect.
NASA's administrator is blasting the space agency's handling of the 2024 mission that left 2 astronauts in space for months longer than anticipated. Administrator Jared Isaacman unveiled the results of a new investigation being presented to Congress. Isaacman says Boeing implemented faulty spacecraft designs and NASA approved them.
But at NASA, we managed the contract. We accepted the vehicle. We launched the crew to space. We made decisions from docking through post-mission actions. A considerable portion of the responsibility and accountability rests here.
NASA is now qualifying the mission as a Class A mishap, its highest distinction of error. The agency says it will not fly a Boeing spacecraft until those errors are addressed. February is Black History Month, and the Houston City Controller's Office is honoring several notable Black Houstonians for their contributions to the city. The honorees include gospel artist Yolanda Adams, Houston Texans head coach Demeco Ryans and his wife Jamila, and Rice University President Reginald DeRoche. At a celebration at City Hall Thursday, City Controller Chris Hollins spoke about how Black history shapes Houston.
Houston's story cannot be told without Black excellence. It cannot be told without Black leadership. It cannot be told without Black service. It cannot be told without the individuals that we're honoring here today. We know that Houston is Houston, the Houston that we know, because it's a mosaic of its people. Diversity isn't just a word here, it's a lifestyle.
This year's program also marked 100 years of Black History Month celebrations in the U.S. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR produce programming that meets the highest standards of public service in journalism and cultural expression.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello there, Houston. Celeste and Frank have the day off, so you remember her as my favorite Valentine from last week. Doris Childress is back
Ernie.
with us today sitting in. Hello, Doris.
Glad to be back.
I was thinking about this. I think our dating has gone on long enough that I am ready now to clear out a drawer for you when you stay over. So
okay, we'll put the
to
essentials in.
We made it to that phase. I bring up Valentine's Day. When you were on the show last time, we were talking about Valentine's Day and Valentine plans. And as is often the case when you're on a live show and you're just talking off the top of your head, you may say things. You may have said something that got a little attention on your husband. What did you make reference to?
When we were talking to the intimacy coach, she was just we were talking about compliments. And I was saying, just don't say anything, make it direct. And I said he had, to say it again, great legs. Well, that started something. My husband has great legs. So he started getting all these texts from his friends. Hello, legs. Hello, pastor legs, reverend legs. And
yes, that's another part.
He's a pastor. He's a pastor. And the worst part was that he was at church, and the sweetest little old lady just lifted up his pants leg. So
to check out
Robert really got it.
Well,
so,
Robert,
I'm sorry, but I love you, dear.
Yeah, we all love Robert. And now we know he's got great legs,
Great
too.
legs.
So, but leave him under his pant leg. He'll show them to you when he wants you to see him. We have a lot going on today's show, and it's going to be a busy show. We're looking at things all across the spectrum, from international affairs to what's going on at the Supreme Court to affordability right here in Houston. We're in early voting, and we have Lieutenant Governor candidate for the Democratic seat is going to be joining us in the second hour. And we've got all of our YouTubers out there joining us and on YouTube. So if you're not a member of our YouTube family, get on over there and join. It's a great group of folks.
I think they'll want to call in or text in today. There's a lot of great content.
And I think what's important, and we always try and remind everyone, is Hello Houston is a format for all of the city to get involved. That's why we give the phone number, 713-440-8870. You can call, text, also the email address, talk@hellohouston.org, because we want this to be a place where, as we say in our promos, Houston talks. So join in the conversation, be part of the family here, and work with us on this stuff.
We've got buzzwords today: art, tariffs, affordability, all the things you want to talk about.
The buzzwords you want to have. But because we're right at the top of the show, it's time for headlines, and we've got a guest to join us, so I'll let you talk us into the first headline.
Okay, let's get right into it. The Supreme Court said President Trump's tariffs policies under IEEPA are unconstitutional, dealing a major blow to the president's signature economic policy. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the 6-3 opinion. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito and Brett Kavanaugh all dissented. At issue in the case were the implementation of Trump's campaign pledge to impose massive tariffs on foreign imports. After his inauguration, Trump issued an executive order that initially imposed a tariff of at least 10% on goods from countries doing business with the United States. Goods from countries like China have been hit with much higher tariffs, up to 145%. Though they've come down since then, but imports from allies like Canada and Mexico have been taxed 25%. Canada's rate was later increased to 35%. But the up and down fluctuating tariffs around the world kind of spooked American businesses, prompting a court challenge and contending that the president had exceeded his authority in imposing the tariffs altogether. So, what are your thoughts? Call us at 713-440-8870.
There's a lot to unpack in this because as much as it gives one answer, it gives more questions. And someone who can help us dig through all of this is Dietrich von Biedenfeld, Assistant Professor of Law and Supply Chain Management over at UH Downtown. Dietrich, welcome back to the program. Always good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Okay, this came out, and at first, to a lot of us, it was a surprise. But as I understand it, the White House may have been expecting this and already kind of deciding what to do to redirect and continue on with this program. What is your understanding?
My understanding is that, again, we're a little bit surprised with the Supreme Court majority exercising a lot of broad discretion given to the president and the executive branch. This Article 2 power the past year has been exceptional, the breadth and depth of the allowances that the Supreme Court of the United States has permitted them. Conversely, we believe that the delayed ruling, particularly with Chief Justice Roberts being an institutionalist wanting to preserve the power, authority, reputation, credibility of the court, that the delay was intentional to basically telegraph to the White House, it's not looking good for you. This is an opportunity for you to begin to assess your relationships, et cetera. And it doesn't remove all tariff authority from the president. This 1977 law signed by Jimmy Carter has very practical considerations for the U.S. national security interest, particularly when we think about the oil situation that we dealt with in the late 70s, early 80s. But at the end of the day, overstimulation of and sort of the exaggeration of national security interests, the court said no. So what does that mean, particularly for importers? They're likely going to, and we already have court cases and litigation associated with importers and other businesses seeking refunds because of these then seemingly unconstitutional tariffs. Businesses, I know a lot of people are excited about the possibility that businesses now will have the permission and capacity to lower prices, but that doesn't mean that they will.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Doris and I were talking about this earlier, that once the marketplace shows it can handle a higher price, this happened before that we see it, they tend to be very slow to roll those prices back. So once again, it looks like the little guy gets it, that, okay, so maybe it's unconstitutional, but hey, they'll pay this much for that. Let's keep the price there and we'll make a better profit. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And we know that governments hate to get rid of a source of revenue. We think about it with the tollways and many other emergency service district tax revenue that governments have said, once we pay this off, we're going to stop this taxing. And you never see that happen, because once you have a source of revenue, the concern is then having to bring it back. So it's a lot harder to bring back these sources of revenue if there is other instability in the market. We saw with the pandemic. So tariffs aren't the only economic factor that can impact a business's profitability. When we think about changes in the labor market or other economic uncertainty, businesses would like to keep this cushion for as long as possible. And since consumers have demonstrated a willingness to continue to buy beef and other products, eggs, despite increased prices, why would you lower it?
A quick question, just for the average listener and myself. Looking at the practical and political implications, can you talk about the risk factors, the limit of executive power, and trade policy? Does it go back just to Congress, and it's not in the executive power?
At the end of the day, this ruling does reassert Congress's authority. However, de jure and de facto distinctions, right? And the easy analogy that I use for the drivers in this region is de jure, the speed limit's 65. De facto, if you're going 65 in the passing lane and anywhere in the Houston area, you're in trouble. So even though the Supreme Court has reasserted Congress's authority under this 1977 law to really govern the trade relations of the United States, again, Senate with the confirmation authority of ambassadors, and U.S. Trade Representative, House of Representatives with a lot of authority in these areas, at the end of the day, the Article I branch has to accept that power, and we haven't seen that willingness. So I don't think de facto that Speaker Johnson is really willing to step on the president's Article II powers at present. And I think that because the president has such broad sweeping authority, and again, we don't have a lot of certainty on the areas such as Jerome Powell's, can the president remove the Fed chair, those sorts of things. I think there's still going to be a lot of uncertainty as far as is the presidential or the office of the president going to attempt to assert this authority in a different way, or because certain tariff powers under the act have been reaffirmed, are they just going to try to narrowly tailor them in that way?
Looking at the majority's statement on this, if I'm not reading it wrong, they're basically saying Congress must speak clearly if it intends to delegate the power to the president, which to me says that they can, and we have seen that Congress has been doing the president's bidding. They could have a motion to say, in this case, for this situation, the president, we waive our authority to do that. Would they need a supermajority, or could they do it with just 50% plus one voting on that to give that power to the president?
Practically, they would just need a simple majority, because at the end of the day, this is Congress's power to delegate. So it would move through the House, the Senate, and then the president's desk could sign it. But we also see that as an unlikely possibility, particularly when we see how the House rebuked the administration on the USMCA relationship with Canada. Mm-hmm. So again, in the first term, this president signed a successor to NAFTA and moved that forward, and now we see us kind of pulling back from that, but Congress said no. Now, at the end of the day, the president can veto that, but with a simple majority, Congress could delegate, and the president would be likely to sign that.
Take me back, if you can, for just a second to the 1977 IEEPA agreement, whatever you want to call it, law. What exactly does that say? I guess the confusion in here is that it has to be an emergency in which he can then wage tariffs.
Ernie, to piggyback on that, what constitutes that emergency?
Right, and that's a you have to get the legal answer, which is it depends. And Congress should really own this, and they have abrogated that responsibility, as we've seen. But at the end of the day, defining what is an emergency, at the time of the signing of this act, we were determined, or Congress determined, that we had already been in a continuous state of national emergency. They felt like we had already existed in a way that weakened us in our global relationships, not only for national security in a militaristic sense, but particularly in the economic and financial sense. So we've seen Congress, I think a parallel here, also not to overcomplicate it, is how we amended the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act to allow for businesses to use facilitation payments and not classify them under the SEC and DOJ standards of bribes. So we sort of legalized certain mechanisms for businesses to exist in the global commercial structure in a more fair place. So at the end of the day, the president really can determine and delegate, like we do with FEMA or anything else, what is an emergency. And Congress would really need to expressly say, this is not. But the challenge in this case really comes down to it being overbroad and overused. Mm-hmm. So when you say that something applies to everything, that becomes a problematic legal argument. Again, we see this throughout the civil code, of whether it be EEOC protections or, again, the definition of tariffs, where the law is very hesitant to say that everyone is exactly the same and everyone is similarly situated.
Let me ask another question then about this. Some estimates would say that through these tariffs, about $170 billion have been collected. And then the question becomes, how do you, if you commit a crime and it's found to be a crime, that something you did was illegal, you usually have to make whole the people you took from. You steal this from someone, you have to give it back. How do you give back $170 billion? First of all, how do you allocate that back to folks? And second of all, what does it do to the economy and the budgets and how that money has been applied and spent already?
Well, I'll start with the simple part of this. It doesn't do too much to the economy because businesses have already eaten that cost. If it was a business that could not support this additional sort of tax, as we've determined the tariffs to be, then that business is already either under bankruptcy protection or has closed. So the businesses that are now suing to get some of this money back, it does increase their profitability, but we've seen local trend or sort of many trends that are about shareholder return, not as much about increasing employee wages, hiring more workers. Those sorts of trends, just like trying to cut the prices after you've raised them, are less likely to occur. So in that sense, I believe we're not going to see too much economic impact with this relatively small amount in our $40+ trillion debt. Where it gets a lot more complex is your question about returning or remitting these funds to the rightful owners. So because they've been unlawfully taxed and now we need to issue these refunds, we have a number of challenges, even to the point of what we've seen with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? And we see a lot of memes about this. Is Marco Rubio going to have to put on the uniform of the tariff refunder, right? He's doing everything else. So at the end of the day, who is going to be the arbiter of what is the fair amount owed to these individuals? In litigation, of course, these companies are going to use actuaries and other financial professionals to attempt to assess an actual dollar value. But that also becomes the challenge of the loss of beneficial use and enjoyment, a term we often use in real property, but in this case, the monetary sense of if we had this $500,000, would we be in a $600,000 better position today than we were at the time of this tariff? So it gets very, very complex, and it's probably going to have to be litigated. And we'll see, of course, lawyers get paid first, but after that, the business owners and importers are probably going to net any proceeds, assuming that the Article 2 branch has professionals in place that can actually do this very complex calculation.
Well, Ernie and I were in the office, we joking around, but I know every listener is wondering too, since we have shouldered some of this cost. What's in it for us, the average taxpayer, when everyone say we have paid the cost of these tariffs or carried the burden? Do we get something?
Very unlikely. There have been talks about various, of course, we go from the Trump Gold Card to the Trump refunds. So in sort of a separate category, we have seen the administration contemplating the idea of certain direct payments to individuals, certain tax refunds or other areas where individuals and families can see some return of their tax dollars. The problem is, again, with over $40 trillion of debt, where do you find this money? And if you already have to pay this back to the importers who are the direct people, right? And then we get into complex legal theories like proximate cause and so those sorts of areas where the actual entity paying the fee is going to receive the refund, even though you and I, the consumers, bore that burden later. So the direct consequence of the tariffs was borne by importers oftentimes, and they will receive that remittance. And then, of course, it would be up to them whether they want to pass that savings on to, or that return into and transform it into savings for consumers, which they may at some point if there's competition. But if everybody agrees, much like a union or other organized unit, if everyone in the business community agrees that they were harmed and they get this money and we're going to keep prices the same in a non-collusive, non-RICO fashion, then there's not a lot in it for us. And it's not really, when you think about the population of the United States and consumer population of the United States, 170 billion, or even if it was some of the calculations that the administration has tried to put out, if it went up to 250 billion or something along those lines, it still really wouldn't impact your pocketbook any more than one of these settlements with the credit cards when you get your 37 cents back because they overcharged you on a currency exchange in another country. A lot like that.
Yeah. We were talking at the top of the show about how this is a place where Houston can call in and be part of the conversation. It's 713-440-8870. Thomas from Montgomery is on the line. Thomas, what's on your mind?
Well, thumbs up for SCOTUS for doing the right thing. I mean, Trump had no right to impose these tariffs, and if you look at it, he's been doing the same thing to the country that he did to his own businesses. He misspent and overspent, and he was a flop as a businessman. So thumbs up for SCOTUS.
Thomas,
thumbs up for KUHF for repeating Houston Manners at night. I've not heard it at night because I hear it in the morning, but I used to listen to WNYC, and they had a 2-hour interview show hosted by a fellow named Leonard Lopate. It was on for 2 hours in the morning from 10 to noon. and I could hear it again at midnight to 2 a.m. if I wanted to hear it again. So you're doing what WNYC did years ago.
Hey, Thomas, before I let you go, if Hello Houston re-aired late in the night, would you listen to us a second time?
If I stayed up that late, sure, yeah, maybe.
Thomas, thank you for calling in.
Don't stay up that late.
Thank you for calling. Don't forget, Hello Houston, the best of, is on our weekends, so you can catch us on Saturday and Sunday just as well as you do Monday through Friday. Thank you, Thomas, for giving me a spot to plug that also.
Another question. How do you think this is going? Well, does it reshape or stabilize our future trade, this new move?
At present, the administration still has a lot of levers to impact what our trade relationships are, from the appointment of ambassadors to the U.S. Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, all appointed by President Trump, and then generally under the Senate confirmed pretty expeditiously. So at the present, there's still a lot of uncertainty. And because these sorts of transitions have happened over the year, it's been a breakneck pace. Of course, the term of the year has been unprecedented. But at the end of the day, when we think about inking some of these trade deals for hundreds of millions of dollars, the negotiations that have gone on with the European Union and China, with South American countries and China, those things, the wheels are already turning and the momentum is already there. And so it's very challenging then, like stopping a train, to then just say, oh, actually now the U.S. Is back to itself, we're going to pivot. Because I don't think, again, without strong action by Congress, which I doubt we will see in the next year, it's very difficult for foreign countries, foreign investors, and businesses to say, okay, we're going to solidify our relationships here. We have certainty. So I think this ruling may be seen as inevitable in the legal community, but particularly in the diplomatic community, I don't think it does as much because of the strength that Article 2 has demonstrated. And at the end of the day, this is a 6-3 ruling on something that arguably, again, many legal scholars should probably see as a 9-0 ruling. So because of that, I think that further weakens the position of, for example, a trade representative from the European Union to say to their elected leaders and their voters, we're going to reconvene with the United States to rebuild that trade relationship. We're going to restructure and immediately remove the reciprocal tariffs that we might have implemented. It's just not that quick.
Dietrich von Biedenfeld, Assistant Professor of Law and Supply Chain Management at University of Houston, downtown. Dietrich, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to continue this talk in a different slant. We're going to be speaking with the Hobby School of Public Affairs about cost of living in Houston and what they found out about that. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7. We'll be right back.
Meet Dio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Retirees. That means your support for trusted news and programs could have double the impact for our community. Find out if your company participates at houstonpublicmedia.org/match.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, Conan O'Brien is hosting the Oscars again. And we'll talk about things that have gone wrong in the past on the big night.
You know, I don't want anyone to slap me.
But you'd like a streaker.
I'd like a streaker. And you know what I'd really like? Yeah. A streaker to slap me.
Conan O'Brien, next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour.
Listen Sunday morning at 9 here on News 88.7.
Hello, I'm Nikki Beattie. Join me for this week's Arts Hour from the BBC. With Hollywood star Kristen Stewart on her directorial debut, The Chronology of Water, Oscar-winning British actor Riz Ahmed, Japanese composer Dai Fujikura, and my conversation with Oscar-nominated Brazilian cinematographer Adolfo Veloso. That's all in the Arts Hour from the BBC.
The Arts Hour, 9 o'clock tonight, and then tomorrow at 11 p.m.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from downtown Houston, moving forward with more people back in the office, more visitors every week, and over $1 million grant dollars invested into small businesses and storefronts. More at downtownhouston.org.
Support comes from Base Power. As hurricane season approaches, Base Power offers energy plans to Texans with home backup for outages and fixed energy rates. Eligibility details at basepowercompany.com/NPR.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manouse and guest host Doris Childress.
And we are back. A new survey from the University of Houston shows that nearly 80% of Houstonians say their paychecks aren't keeping up with the rising cost of living. The survey released by the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs asked residents in Houston and Chicago about their biggest economic concerns, and the cost of living was at the top of everyone's mind from both cities. To walk us through the study's findings, we welcome two of its authors, Maria Perez Arguelles, as an assistant professor at the Houston Hobby School of Public Affairs, and Soran Mohtadi, a postdoctoral fellow at the Hobby School of Public Affairs. There we go. Thank you both for coming here. I wanted to say business. I don't know why I wanted to say business, but thank you both for being here. And as usual, if you guys want to connect and ask questions, call us at 713-440-8870. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we get really into all the questions we have, I'm just curious, do we know how this fits on the national scene? Is this pretty much what you're seeing? I know you did Chicago and Houston, but other people have looked at this other places. Are we pretty much on average, or are our findings unique to our area?
Yeah, so in these surveys, we were able to confirm this trend of national pessimism towards how things are going, and especially towards the economy and rising cost of living.
Okay, so Soran, are we any more extreme in our views than the rest of the country, or are we fitting in pretty even?
Yeah, I think in terms of our findings are aligns with the Confidence Consumer Index, which is in January 2026, they published this report, which is kind of like this fell down like to lowest level comparing to 2014.
Okay.
Who was surveyed? I'd just love to know.
So for this study specifically, we compared the Chicago Speaks panel by NORC at the University of Chicago and the Space City panel results from the University of Houston for Houston. So we compared responses in Chicago and in Houston. We asked the same two questions. First one was like, how do you perceive things are going in your city, in your state, and in the country? Are they going in the wrong or in the right direction? And the second question was like, what are the top three main economic concerns?
So I guess then, what are the three top economic concerns?
Yeah, so for Houston and Chicago, for both, high cost of living was at the top. Wages not keeping up with the cost of living for Houston was a main one. And then the third for both of the city was inequality and wealth disparity.
Okay, when you talk about wealth disparities, how was that question really positioned? Because everyone has a different opinion of what that is. So how did you pose the question and get the answers that you got?
So we just gave them those options. We had a list of different options, top economic concerns, and they were asked to pick the three main for them. Mm-hmm. So after that, we ranked them, and these to make sure that they're done.
I just really would like to know.
But I think that this wealth disparity, it can be aligned with the other result of wages not keeping up with cost of living. And we see this gap in Houston specifically, where the economy is growing at a fast pace. But this is not necessarily being translated to the everyday spendings and everyday living.
Soran, tell me, when we look at a term like affordability, did we see differences when you looked across neighborhoods or income groups in when they felt things were affordable or not affordable? What did we learn about the different communities in Houston?
Yeah, first of all, I should mention that once we're talking about affordability, in Houston and Chicago, for example, we found that wages not keeping up the cost of living in Houston, and cost of living is a top economic challenge in Chicago, and both coming on like slightly different angles. So, for example, Houston's paychecks is not keeping up, and another which is like income pressure, And another one in Chicago, we have the cost of living as a top economic challenge, which is the cost pressure. So I think it's if we look at single top economic challenge is cost of living in both cities.
Let me talk a little bit more about affordability here, because we often hear the story put out that at the high end of the economic scale, folks are fine with it. The Dow is, all of this is good. Markets are up. But for people lower down on the economic structure chain, they're being hit harder. Do you find that their understanding of where we are in this region right now is the same regardless of income level, or is there a disparity in how they interpret how we are doing?
I think, like in general, we found that there is pessimism about how things are going.
Across the board?
Across the border, but specifically talking about economic challenges, responses vary. And we see that for the case of Houston, for example, groups like women, elder population, Hispanics are more concerned and more worried about the high cost of living. So this means having trouble covering every month expenses such as food, energy, health, and other.
In those groups that you just listed, the age, race, gender, ethnicity, which one do you think is struggling the most? Because I hear a lot of young people saying, we just can't make ends meet, especially those recent college graduates. They come out thinking they're going to make $60,000 or $70,000 in one job, but now they realize, I've got to work two jobs to just get that to meet the cost of living. So is it the age, the gender, groups, or what?
So we found age groups differences with those between 30 and 44 and those above 60 experiencing the highest burden, and women and also Hispanics.
So that's Gen Z and Gen X. Okay.
Yeah.
End of the alphabet.
Yeah, but it makes sense for the city of Houston. We have a lot of young population. So I think this is an area that should be good for policymakers to prioritize on, like looking into pathways to transition from lower paying sectors to higher paying sectors, and from the education workforce from the education side of things to the workforce. So
do we look at all in this survey as to how it impacts psychological well-being, how much people are concerned about this and how that affects their health, their outlook, things like that, in regard to what the economy is doing?
Yeah, so, Soran.
Yeah, I think we are looking at public sentiment, right? So these public sentiments could affect the behavior of people on spending, on moving decisions, on even voting and trusting the institution. So this is somehow should be like policymakers should be take into account that this like when we're talking about the purchasing power of people, so that might affect other segments as well.
When you talked about moving, is relocation considered or thought about when you look at affordability? And if it is for Houstonians, where else would you go? Because, I think prices are rising, but Houston in general, compared to other states and cities, it's, almost affordable for some. But where would people go that would be better than us, in your opinion?
Yeah, so that's a hard question to answer, and we have asked before questions about moving and reasons for moving. Of course, cost of living emerges as one, and the wage gap, but also natural disasters. We've noticed is a main reason for people moving out of Houston. And yeah, so I think the main thing here is like trying to close that wage gap, so earnings must rise up.
Do you feel that from looking at the respondents and the comments that are made, that people are more, I don't know if more is the right word, but are more concerned in the moment of what finances are doing, or are we seeing the stressors falling more toward what the future holds, retirement, programs like that? Is that playing into this fear right now, or is it a situation where they are just looking right in front of them?
Yeah.
I think, we did this survey in, for the Houston in
October.
Yeah, October and November, right? And for the Chicago, it was like November and December.
Oh, this one we're talking about, yeah.
Exactly. So it's quite recent. So that what we found is not isolated from the national perceptions, and like the economy is right now is going on.
What about public safety? That was one of the issues also. I mean, affordability at the top, but what were some of the others that people hit on so far as they're concerned?
Education, public safety, and to Soran comment, in October, we conducted another survey for Houston in which we asked questions about moving, cost of living, this same type of issues that we're noticing in Houston. And we also found that people are struggling with everyday paycheck. So it's short-run thing, like struggling to pay their debt. We also see groups with high amount of debt, education debt, car loans, housing. So those are stressors month by month, but in the long run, they add up.
Have we seen other previous earlier surveys that showed different concerns? You tend to talk to people and you always hear, oh, people, it's the economy, stupid, or whatever that comment was in phase. In the past, have we seen other things like education, healthcare, things like that? And this is surprising now that economy has usurped that, or has that always been us?
I think we've been noticing these concerns increasing over time, but also concerns about coping with extreme weather events, for example, or shocks that on top of everyday struggle that you have would add up and create an additional stressor every month. Concerns about public safety also have emerged, and the education and skill gap.
Yeah. In some ways, I would say, though, all of this ties back into economy. If you don't have the money to do it, if you don't have the money to feel safe, if you can't take care of your family, all these other problems are important, but you got to be able to survive.
I think you're right, Ernie. Things shift according to the times. I remember in the 80s, late 80s, maybe early 90s, it was public safety. You know, everybody was concerned with crime, but now it's affordability because we just can't make ends meet, which I hope doesn't lead to more crime. You know.
Well, and also what Doris is talking about here is I think about the story. When I first moved here, everyone talked about Houston's a great place to live because it's low cost of living, things are affordable, people came here for that. Do people still believe that?
Yeah, I think the city still I think is affordable, but it's like what we are seeing. I mean, it's a comparison between two major cities in United States, and
which is funny because I came from Chicago to Houston, so I'm in both ends of this survey.
Exactly. But what we did is like things is moving, still affordable, but in terms of like what people are like looking and their city is much optimistic comparing to state and
Mm-hmm.
national, mostly in Houston. And I think this is more like things are moving, as I said, but it might be in a lower pace right now.
Yeah.
Houston and Chicago, were they intentionally selected to be in comparison, and why?
So we think this is interesting because Chicago is the third largest city in the country. Houston is the fourth, and it's expected to soon surpass Chicago because it's growing at a higher rate. So Houston will soon become the third largest city. And Houston has great economic opportunity, a young population, so it's affordable. On the other hand, Chicago has a different urban composition, different racial composition. So it's interesting to compare cities that are following different trajectories, but large in size and with different components.
And on top of that, in population growth in Chicago is just 1%, which is the national level. We have 2.6%, which is lower than the national population growth in Chicago.
So did those differences skew the answers, you think?
Well, something that's interesting is that even though Houston remains more affordable and cost of living is lower than in Chicago, when we compared responses, the pessimism was felt in both cities. So both cities are worried about same issues, affordability, and are worried about the direction in which things are going in the country specifically.
And as we wrap up, my last, just a reaction to it, do you feel the opinions match reality? Oftentimes I have trouble in surveys of public opinion. The reality is this, but people believe that. Do they match up this time?
I think they do. They do in a sense. We will see more of this in the long run with our panel. We are planning to conduct 4 surveys per year. So we're going to be able to compare these responses in time and probably come up with more results.
Thank you both very much for coming in the Hobby School of Public Affairs and that look into these fascinating economic feelings and concerns in our community. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, we're going to speak with Houston artist David McGee. We're going to swing all the way over now to arts. We've been talking a lot about economy. Now we go to arts as Hello Houston continues.
Thanks again, guys.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
Really politicized by either side.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. That story on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
You can hear it this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
And soon I have swum my 4 laps at the most, and I keep going, and I swim 10 laps and 15 laps, and the teachers are amazed. They have never seen me do anything like this.
Join us next time for Stories of the Deep End. That's on the Moth Radio Hour from PRX.
You can hear that tomorrow. It's on at noon on News 88.7.
This week on Planet Money, how incarcerated people in Maine started to work remotely for outside companies, thanks to an email from a local college.
They asked me if one of my residents that was incarcerated at the Maine State Prison could be an adjunct professor from the prison.
And on How I Built This, entrepreneurs get business advice from host Guy Raz and the founder of Jones Roads Beauty, Bobby Brown. That's on the next How I Built This and Planet Money from NPR.
It's on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston System, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manouse and guest host Doris Childress.
David McGee is a Houston artist known for his work, which, through the mediums of painting, printmaking, watercolor, and drawing, explores the interplay between image and text, as well as subjects including race, language, art history, and the recognition of existence. Starting this month, the Bechtler Museum of Modern Art in Charlotte, North Carolina, will present the first major museum survey of McGee's work called David McGee, the Griot, and the Nightingale, which will trace his incredible 3-decade career and feature more than 100 paintings and works on paper. To tell us more about his work and the upcoming exhibit is the artist himself, Houstonian David McGee, and the Bechtler Museum curator, Katia Zavistovski. Did I get it even close to right?
Close. Katia Zavistovski.
I'm going to work on that one. But anyway, welcome to both of you to the show. Thank you very much.
You know, I got a chance to look at some of your art, and I got to say, amazing. Loved it.
Thank you.
It's really, really good because, okay, I did a little test with myself as I was watching, as I got a chance to start seeing some of the works. With your interplay between image and text, I started covering the word to see if I would get a different understanding or meaning from the art whenever you had art that had font or a text and then the image. And it changed each time I would cover the text and then look at the art by itself. Is that the response you would like to evoke from people who are viewing your art?
I think people have relationships to image and separate relationships to language. Mm-hmm. And I think we are governed by both in different ways, and it can detour us from our realities and pretty much keep us off balance because we have expectations of both. And so I think that when people see images in language, that they assume that it represents the image they're looking at, and they don't quite match, it can throw you off balance.
Yeah,
because we're governed by what we've learned.
Yeah, that's true. You know, when I look at your art, I really think about Roland Barthes and his cultural codes and that study, and how the text can anchor the image. Tell us, how do you feel when people come in with all these different receptions from your art? Because I know people come in and say, I got this, I got that, I feel this. How does that make you feel as the artist and the creator?
You know, I think there was a great quote by Gertrude Stein. She says, and I think all painters should understand this, sometimes the painting is not even the painter's business. You know, and I think that when people come in and see my work, my expectations is that they are reborn anew by their own governing responsibilities. You know, because my journey in the making of the work is something that I felt at that present moment of the making. But when people come in, their feelings and their qualities of feelings and their emotional weights is up to them. And the work expands by their viewership. That's how I see it.
To stay on that topic just for a second, then I've got something for you, Katia, but I'm curious, when you create and you have the idea behind the art, I often go back and forth about, is really art the idea behind it, or is it the product that you produce? And when people look at something that you have thought through, planned, created, the idea that they then may see something totally different in it than what you may have intended or expressed from your own point of view, is there a freedom in that separation of your experience with your art separate from an audience's experience with it? Thought on that?
I don't think she can hear.
No, that was for you. That was for you, David.
That was for you, David.
Oh, that was for me.
Yeah, I thought, wow, I asked such a profound question. He's really thinking this one through.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, I'm lost. I thought that was Katia. So can you repeat it a little bit?
Yeah, I can sum it up much more quickly. Your concept of it, it's kind of similar to what Doris was asking you, that you spend time creating something that comes from within you that's expressive, that you're saying something, audience comes in, looks at it maybe with a different set of experiences and ideas, and how that settles with you as an artist. And that, are you comfortable with them maybe not seeing your intention? Is there intentionality in what you put out, or is it simply to serve the moment?
You know, I think, listen, an artist's expectations of the audience should not be governed by what the artist expects from himself or the image that he's made. I think art expands by the viewership of the audience, and whatever their expectations are and whatever they come away from looking at the paintings is perfectly fine with me. I think, I think people have a way of looking at images separate from the person who made the images. And the debate starts there. I think people can be disappointed. I think people can be entombed. I think people can expand or just come away confused. But I think the engagement will bring all kinds of emotional temperatures from people. So I think artists should let the viewers have their own experience, and I'm perfectly fine with it.
Yeah. So then let me take that. Let me take this then to Katia about it. So then, in selecting the pieces you put out, and in a sense, the narrative that's being told on the wall and in the exhibition, what are you looking to say about the artwork? Is there that, or do you let the artist guide you toward what should be displayed?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having us on today. I did my graduate work in Houston, and so it's nice to reconnect with Houston and your listeners in this way. To answer your question, I think that every exhibition, of course, is different. And for this particular project, this is David's mid-career survey. And so it was a real collaboration. I can't even imagine having looked at his entire body of work and chosen pieces without, really a lot of conversations with David about what he was thinking at various points in his career and, the narrative threads that he weaves across of his work and so on. I will say that one of the things that excites me the most about David's work and about this exhibition is the many, many points of access that his work offers to people. I mean, the sort of going off of your last question to David, I think that there are so many layers of meaning and so many stories embedded within any one artwork, which really both frees the viewer to, create their own kind of expanded meanings. But also as a curator, it's really exciting because I, have my own thoughts about the way the exhibition is laid out, which artworks we chose to include in the show. But there is a kind of looseness and an openness and a fluidity, which I hope will be, extra engaging for people who come see the show.
David, I have a question. We're sitting here and we're saying, what does this mean? What does that mean? Does that irritate you as an artist when we're prodding you, trying to make you tell us what you meant or make you give us the meaning instead of us taking it upon ourselves and be the viewer and extract what we need, whether it's oppositional, negotiated, or, the preferred meaning? Does that irritate you? You can be honest with us.
I think human beings have natural, curiosities about what images and art means to people. I think musicians go through that a lot. Musicians ranging from like Bob Dylan and, people of that nature that does these cryptic lyrics, and people want to know what the meanings is. I think that's a natural reaction for people to have. I think for me, I can't afford to deal in didacticism when I'm talking about my work, because when I'm looking at it, I'm reinventing the narrative, and sometimes I can distance myself from being the author of the work. So it's funny because coming into a show that is almost 3 decades, the big thing that one has to deal with is recognition. Do you still feel the same way when you were younger? And or the technical issues like, oh man, I could have did that. I could have played that a different way.
Well, we appreciate you. Hate to wrap you up, but we appreciate you coming out. You give us a great lesson in semiotics through your artwork. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Katia, thank you for joining us. And David McGee, of course, your artwork, phenomenal. Thank you also for joining us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it'll be the second hour of the show, and we'll be talking with Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin about her run for Lieutenant Governor of Texas. All that and more coming up on Hello Houston right after the break.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manouse, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Tonight on TV8, after a new episode of Party Politics at 8, it's an American Masters double feature with music icon Roberta Flack at 8:30 and musician and poet Sun Ra at 10. Tonight on TV8.
We have a slight chance of showers for today. We'll warm up to around 78. Tonight's low 64. Patchy fog moves in overnight. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, President Trump is weighing whether the U.S. will launch a tax on Iran, raising questions about a potential economic downturn. We'll discuss this with University of Houston Energy Fellow Ed Hers. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm guest host Doris Childress. We'll also talk with Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin, who will discuss her campaign for Texas Lieutenant Governor.
Plus, we'll also share a rundown of events happening this weekend in Houston for our regular Friday feature, Last Minute Plans.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the purple box.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is blasting the ruling from the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court that strikes down his tariffs policy under an emergency powers law as unconstitutional. A source not authorized to speak publicly tells NPR Trump called the decision a disgrace. Trump was behind closed doors meeting with a bipartisan group of governors when the ruling came down. NPR's Nina Totenberg reports on Chief Justice John Roberts' opinion today in a ruling viewed as a major setback for the Trump administration.
He referred to the revolution and the start of the United States of America, saying much of that revolution was based on an objection to being taxed, and therefore the framers put in the Constitution the powers of Congress were to tax, and that imports and exports have taxes, and that therefore, if a president wants to impose a tax, a big tariff, Congress has to expressly authorize it.
NPR's Nina Totenberg reporting President Trump is expected to remark shortly on the Supreme Court ruling. Trump says he has not yet decided whether he will use military force against Iran, but as NPR's Greg Myrie tells us, the U.S. has now assembled a formidable air and naval presence in the region.
After a month-long buildup, U.S. forces in the Middle East have reached a critical mass. A second aircraft carrier and 50 or more fighter jets have just arrived or will be in place soon. The U.S. now appears capable of a sustained bombing campaign that could last weeks, if not longer. President Trump remains non-committal about his plans.
Now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
Media reports in Iran say the country is expecting a U.S. strike. Iran's leaders say they will retaliate if attacked, and they have a stockpile of ballistic missiles. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
The president continues to antagonize Maryland Governor Wes Moore over disputed responsibilities for cleaning up a burst sewer pipe that has spilled millions of gallons of sewage into the Potomac River. Here's WAMU's Jackson Sonnenberg.
In a post on social media, Trump said it was Moore's responsibility to address the break in the Potomac Interceptor sewage line. He also said if Moore cannot, he should ask Trump nicely to help, like the mayor of Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser requested federal funds this week to fully reimburse D.C.'s work on fixing the pipeline. Moore responded earlier in the week to similar comments from Trump, calling them politically motivated and asinine, and says that since the pipe break happened on federal park land, Trump should be responsible for the fix. For NPR News, I'm Jackson Sonnenberg in Washington.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 26 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Galveston County law enforcement held a press conference this morning to talk about a bust on illegal gambling operations in Hitchcock. News 88.7's Juliana Washburn was at the press conference and joins us live to tell us what she heard.
Alexandra, law enforcement tells us 33 people were arrested in relation to illegal game operations in Hitchcock. This includes Hitchcock Mayor Christopher Armacost. The Galveston County Organized Crime Task Force served 21 search warrants in the town, including at Hitchcock City Hall on Wednesday. Law enforcement says this came after complaints from residents and businesses about illegal gambling operations. 749 gaming machines were seized, along with $417,000 in cash and 8 firearms. The investigation continues, and law enforcement says there will be more arrests to come. Live in Galveston, I'm Juliana Washburn, News 88.7.
A state appeals court heard arguments Thursday in a civil case over the state's allegations against a Houston area midwife accused of performing illegal abortions. Though justices heard arguments in the civil case, the defendant, Maria Rojas, was criminally charged by the state last year after the Attorney General's office conducted a lengthy investigation into her Waller County clinics. Mark Herron is an attorney representing Rojas in the civil case.
The Attorney General's office sent unqualified investigators to surveil Mrs. Rojas and her clinics. Those investigators jumped to reckless conclusions, and now my client's life has been completely upended.
While the justices on Thursday seem to support the defense's arguments, they have not yet taken any action. Last night, Houston city officials held the first of 2 community meetings about a proposed rules to crack down on apartment complexes with chronic health and safety violations. The ordinance faced multiple delays last week after pushback from the apartment industry and concerns about a lack of public engagement. The next meeting is slated for the evening of March 5th at the Harris County Department of Education. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manouse, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston, for the second hour of Hello Houston today on this Friday, February 20th. Celeste and Frank have the day off, so it's my pleasure to tell you and remind you and let you know Doris Childress is sitting in with me today. Hello, Doris.
Hello, Ernie. Hello, Houston.
You know, just in the end of the last segment, we were talking with David McGee, and we were talking about his artwork and people's interpretations and what he wants. And it reminded me back many, many years ago, I interviewed Marianne Faithfull, a singer, well-known figure in the late 60s, 70s, and through the 80s. And she had written an autobiography. And I'll never forget her comment. She said, I don't know why once you write an autobiography, you have to go out and explain it to people. And I thought, of course. And her thing was, I wrote it so I don't have to talk about it. And now anyone wants to do is talk about what I wrote about me so I didn't have to talk about me. And I thought, kind of the same thing when you talk to an artist.
Kind of the same thing when you're talking about art. I really loved his artwork. And all really the cool messages behind it with the signifiers and the signified. It's all this. It's a real masterclass in semiotics, which is the study of signs. And, how we as the viewers of the art, we get to take away these different positions of meaning, whether it's negotiated, we take some, we leave some, whether it's the preferred meaning, the meaning that we think the author had, or it's oppositional, where you walk in and you say, that is not good. It has no meaning at all. So it's unique that we get to go in with all those different positions when we're looking at art. And I always wonder, which one do they want us to have?
Yeah.
Do they want us to grapple with it and negotiate it, or just take the preferred meaning?
Another thing that comes to mind, another thought, another comment that comes to mind was talking with an author, and I can't even remember which one it was. And they were talking about their book had been optioned into a movie. And their comment was, because I was asking about, how does it feel to know that now this is how it's going to be interpreted and people are going to see it? And you may not be as involved in this as you were in the writing of your book. And their comment to me was, my book still exists. What I put out there exists. The movie, whatever comes of it, that's something else. And let that exist too. And both of these things can exist in the world. It's not like they erased my book so that they could put this movie out there. And I thought that's a really balanced way of looking at it. And it works back for me about interpreting artwork, is that I put out what I intended to put out. Now, however you see it, that's on you. It doesn't erase what I put out or my original meaning. And so that still exists in the world. Your interpretation is your own.
So when you look at art and you look at, you go to an art exhibit, you go to a movie, do you go to the movie just for the escapism and the relaxation? And do you go to art to really think? Or
I guess it depends on the movie that I'm going to see and who made it and how it was made. Because, there's lots of... schlock in the best possible meaning of the word, where it's put out to tell a story so you can see a story, and here it is. And then there are auteurs out there who are making film as an expression of art and are thinking about the composition of the shots. What was the movie? Tom Ford did a movie, An Innocent Man, I think it was called, and looking at it, just stunning film. Any frame in that movie could have been stopped and made a photo that you hung on the wall. And so things like that I'm going to look at differently,
I go to a museum and it's always what's the deeper meaning. And I don't know if I'm just trying to feel smart or what, but it's always what's the deeper meaning. But what was the movie with Demi Moore with the whole taking the drugs to lose weight and stay beautiful, stay young?
Yes. Oh, my God, I saw it.
Oh, what is it? It's a one-word movie.
Right. They made right now on FX, they've got The Beauty, but that's not it. The Substance.
That's what it was. What it was. It made me think about health the rest of, I don't know, ever since I've been thinking about health. I don't know if that was the intended meaning, but it made me think.
I don't know about that one. I just want to say, I think I delivered that line really well, where I acted as though it just came to me. The name of the film was The Substance, where Jim Kovacic, Jimbo, our executive producer, put it in the chat and shared it with me. But I thought I did such a good job of making it look
honest.
Like I thought of it.
You're honest.
The Substance.
That's what it is.
Basically, I read what I was told.
Okay.
But anyway, we've got a lot going on today's show. Coming up in just a little bit, Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin will be here. She is a candidate for lieutenant governor on the Democratic side of the ballot, and early voting's begun. And so we're going to have her in to talk about her campaign and what she's hoping to accomplish. But first, let's go back into the headlines. You got our first story for us.
Back into the headlines. A full-blown war between the United States and Iran could, in worst-case scenarios, send oil prices soaring and cause an economic downturn. With a massive U.S. military buildup underway in the Middle East, President Donald Trump signaled on Thursday that he will decide in the next 10 days whether to launch strikes against Iran. Iran held annual military drills with Russia on Thursday as a second American aircraft carrier drew closer to the Middle East, with both the United States and Iran signaling they are prepared for war if talks on Tehran nuclear program fizzle out. President Donald Trump said Thursday he believes 10 to 15 days is enough time for Iran to reach a deal. But the talks have been deadlocked for years, and Iran has refused to discuss wider U.S. and Israeli demands that it scale back its missile program and sever ties with armed groups. Indirect talks held in recent weeks made little visible progress, and one or both sides could be buying time for final war preparations. What are your thoughts about these developments? You can call us at 713-440-8870.
I've got a ton of thoughts about this, but we have somebody who can help give us shed better light on all this. University of Houston Energy Fellow Ed Hers is with us right now. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ernie.
Okay, so a lot to unpack here, but I guess the very first point to be, no matter what happens in this conflict, debate, whatever we want to call what's going on right now before we get any further along, is this currently having an impact on oil prices, and what do you see happening moving forward?
It has had an impact. Ever since the president ordered the Gerald R. Ford over to the Mediterranean to get into position. The price of oil is up roughly $10 a barrel over where it was prior to Venezuela. Iran is different than Venezuela. With Venezuela, it was a removal of Maduro, no impact on Venezuela's oil production or output. If anything, it helped the price of oil go down because Venezuelan crude began to reach the market again. Iran's a different story. Mm-hmm. Iran produced roughly 3.2 million barrels a day in December, exports about 1 million barrels a day. If that 1% of the global market, which is roughly 106 million barrels a day, comes off, our research and analysis indicates that the price of oil would go up 20 to 25%. But here's the real challenge. If the Strait of Hormuz is impacted, if there's a partial blockade, let's say half of the oil gets through, maybe just 10 million barrels a day, that could send the price of oil soaring well over $125, $150 a barrel.
What we really, I guess most viewers want to know, what is really pressing in this whole dilemma? What do we want as the United States from this deal?
Well, the president and allies in the Middle East don't want Iran to have a nuclear capability, a nuclear weapon capability. That's been the crux of the problem for the last 2 decades.
So what does it mean if we don't get this deal immediately in these 10 to 15 days? Do you really think we will move toward the war, or will we stretch another 15 days? And what would be the best move, in your opinion, from the president?
I can't speak for the president, but I would expect that he's absolutely meaning business. He has led an attack on Iran in the past. He just had a tremendous success in Venezuela. I'm certain that that's the plan for Iran. Take out their nuclear capabilities, but probably also damage the economic engine of Iran, which is tied pretty much to oil exports.
Mm-hmm. I guess looking at the scene and how things have played out, I almost get the feeling that our position as a nation through the president is strike hard, strike fast. And so not to do prolonged wars, but go in, do what you want, and get back out again. So aligning these military vessels there, getting in position for a war makes me think if there was something, the way it would be done is just a massive quick strike in there, like they did with the nuclear facility in the past. What concerns me and worries me more is that if Iran is holding drills with Russia, this is something more than just striking one country that you have a beef with. Am I off base in the way I'm looking at this?
Well, it would depend upon whether or not Russia would come to Iran's defense. They haven't in the past. Holding drills is vastly different than going to war. Mm-hmm. Russia can ill afford a two-front war, if you will. They certainly have been stymied in Ukraine. That's drained an awful lot of Russia's resources and military capabilities. They were unable to support the regime in Syria. I don't think Russia has an appetite for looking after Iran. If it does, and that brings the U.S. and Russia into direct conflict, then all bets are off. We're really close at that point to having another world war.
Wow. Let me help us understand, and I should know this, and I think a lot of folks listening will know this, but so much happens so quickly nowadays, keeping track of everything is pretty hard to do. Where were we before the first Trump administration? We had a nuclear agreement in place with Iran, but then it was removed by a Trump administration and has led to where we are today. Is that a fair reading of the situation, or was what we had in the past not effective to begin with?
It was not effective to begin with. We had an agreement that was reached during the Obama administration. Obama relieved the sanctions against Iran, and then when Iran cheated, the sanctions against Iran went up again. Not only from the U.S. but from our European allies, and Iran has very few helpers, allies in the Middle East. it's not just Israel they want to turn over. They want Saudi Arabia out of the picture as well. Remember, Iran went to war against Iraq for more than a decade. Mm-hmm. So the sanctions were reimposed during the Obama administration. The Trump administration, Trump 1.0, tried to strengthen them, tried to push Iran back to the bargaining table, and that was, fairly ineffective in the grand scheme of things. So Iran has continued with its enrichment activities, certainly is on a path to building nuclear weapons, and the rest of the world is very uneasy about that.
We saw the Trump strike that went after the nuclear facility there in Iran, and it was touted as they had decimated it, destroyed it, put them back so many years. But it seems as though that isn't what happened, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so break this down for us just so we can put it all in perspective and people can follow along. There is an agreement that is on the table that the U.S. wants Iran to agree to and come to the table with some kind of agreement on the nuclear powers. What does all of this mean for our U.S. allies? How are they positioned in all of this? What's the pros and cons for them?
Well, having Iran as a no longer a threat on the world stage is, I think, to everybody's interest. Reducing that threat is paramount, and that would lead to significant stability across the Middle East. Removing Iran as a bad actor, as an adversary, supporting proxy wars across the Middle East would be really helpful for peace, stability, and economic growth in that area. It appears to be one of those situations where it's in everyone's interest to have this nation disarmed in terms of nuclear weapons.
So it's all or nothing. It's not a midpoint that we could negotiate around things with them. So this is really an all or nothing situation with Iran and this deal.
It certainly appears that way. I don't think anybody's interested in the prospect of a nuclear war. Iran is certainly pushing in that direction. Conventional wars are horrible enough. Nuclear would be much more devastating for everyone.
What does the post-deal look like? What is the end game to all of it? We get a deal. What happens next?
We don't know yet. I think the president's about to speak about that, among other things, including his loss at the Supreme Court on the tariffs. We don't know what the final deal is going to look like because it hasn't been negotiated, assuming we get to one.
Let me just ask this, and it's purely speculative, too, so please no one think that we know something we don't. But there is a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of interest from Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Shah of Iran, who feels he is the heir apparent to the throne there. If there was regime change, he would be somebody that would be a contender to move into that position. If something like that happened, what do you see happening then with the world energy and oil from Iran then, considering his father's position and how the world looked back then?
Yeah, his father was not a nice person either.
Right.
The ability to overthrow him was something that was wildly popular amongst Iranians at the time. I think Iran, the people would prefer a democracy and not go back to a situation where there's a king as a ruler. I mean, that's essentially what they have today. I don't think there's a future for him in Iran.
So even if, because I guess part of his mission is a democracy in which he is voted in, of course, as the leader of the country, but you don't see that as a prospect?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised if it does. He and his family have not been welcome in Iran for any number of reasons. Now, certainly, the religious sect that has taken over the leadership of the country has devastated the country economically and progressively in terms of its citizens. I think Iran was one of the most westernized nations before the revolution. I think they would really want to get back to that.
I guess as we wrap up this conversation then, for folks that are interested in the energy sector of all of this and what it will mean economically, what are you looking for and watching for over the next 10 to 15 days?
Well, there are two things. If there's an attack on the Iranian oil facilities, that will damage Iran's economic capabilities. Removing about 1 million barrels a day, which is what they've been sending to the export markets, would have the impact of prices increasing 20-25%. A lot of that's already priced into the current price of oil. If Iran is able to effect a partial blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, we could see the price of oil get to $150 a barrel really quickly. That would be more than a doubling of the price of gasoline. That's what I'm going to be looking for.
Outside of the oil and the war and all of that, briefly, what would be the humanitarian consequences if we don't reach a deal and we go to war in that region?
It's hard to say. It would depend upon the extent of the targeting by the U.S. military.
Ed, thank you always for your insight and knowledge on this area. There's no one better we can turn to. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin, who is also a Democratic candidate potential for Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Texas. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston, and we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7, but we know you're not always available then to listen, so subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Next time on The Pulse, as a lawyer, James Kimmel loved getting revenge for his clients.
It's all about punishing. It's societal revenge.
But eventually, he realized this desire was making him sick and unbearable to be around.
I think I had decided I'll stake my entire life on winning of this silly conflict.
We'll explore why we seek revenge.
You can hear The Pulse. It's Sunday at 2 p.m.
Typically what I've done recently is I put on an episode of Milk Street Radio and I just stir and stir and stir.
Hi, I'm Christopher Kimball. On my show, Milk Street Radio, we want to be your companion in the kitchen. Join us each week for fascinating food stories, answers to all of your culinary mysteries, and recipes that will change the way you cook.
Milk Street Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manouse and guest host Doris Childress.
Hello, Houston. Joining us now is Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin, a candidate for the Democratic nomination in the race for Lieutenant Governor. She's here to talk to us about her campaign, the issues driving her run, and her vision for the future of Texas. She currently serves District 47 in the State House of Representatives. Representative Goodwin, welcome to Hello Houston. Thank you for being here. And public, Hello Houston people, if you would like to join in the conversation, call or text us at 713-440-8870. Let's talk.
I guess my very first question for you would be, and I know you were about to say thank you for having us on, and I jumped on you. Yes. I apologize. I'm curious, and you can wrap this in your hello, is the state of Texas's appetite for a Democratic lieutenant governor. What are your feelings?
Well, after 30 years of Republican leadership, I think people feel like it is time for change. Our current leadership cares more about putting the 10 Commandments on the classroom wall as opposed to resources in the classroom. Our current leadership isn't solving the problems of the day. They aren't fixing our broken healthcare system. They aren't making housing more affordable. They aren't addressing data centers and the huge amount of water that they use. And so I think people are ready for change. We need some leadership that's going to solve problems. And that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor.
There was a nice list of things you just mentioned, but what is the one passion point for you that you're going to run on and, just drive home with the constituents?
For me, it's public education. When you talk about affordability, I think it starts with having salaries that keep up with inflation so that people can afford, the basics, housing, healthcare, food on the table. So that starts with having a well-educated population. My number one issue and my passion is public education because I grew up in a household where my mom was a Dallas school board member, and her frustration was that it wasn't the school board that decided how much money the district got so that they could give raises to the teachers. It was the Texas legislature. And she felt like the Texas legislature underfunded our public schools, and that is continuing today. When I first ran in 2018, that was what I ran on. And in 2019, the Texas legislature did increase our school funding, but we have not kept up with inflation. And of course, just this last year, the governor and lieutenant governor got their voucher plan passed, and that will take money out of our public schools into private schools. And I'm against that.
Your main competitor, or one of your two competitors on the Democratic side, is Marco Velez. And I'm wondering, Marcos, if you can differentiate for us your points of view and positions there. Why are you asking voters to choose you over either of the other two candidates running?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the policies, on the issues, we are probably very similar. We both believe that we need to help working families, that we need to make things more affordable, improve the lives of everyday Texans. But what sets us apart is that I have served in the Texas legislature for 4 terms now. I ran in 2018 against a 4-term incumbent Republican and was able to flip the seat. It was tough. It was tough to hold on to the seat in 2020. So I have experience running tough elections. I also have experience and have built relationships with people throughout the state because of the laws that I have passed. I've worked with Senator West up in Dallas, with Senator Alvarado in Houston, with Senator Zaffarini in Laredo. And as I have passed bills with them, I have gone to these areas and talked to people about the laws that we've changed. And so I think those relationships are really critical for the next lieutenant governor to get into office and know how the legislature works, know the people, and have those relationships so that they can help. It would be very difficult for someone coming in who's never served in the legislature, who doesn't even know who his state rep is, to come in and become the lieutenant governor.
Just also want to point out Courtney Head is also in the race running. Really quickly before I turn it over to Doris again, how do you talk to labor and get labor on your side? It seems as though he has the support of the Texas AFL-CIO and speaks to labor well. How do you step into that arena, or don't you need to because your constituents is a different group?
Well, I have a 100% voting record with AFL-CIO. I have welcomed labor members into my office every session. And of course, we have worked on the issues and tried to push back against the continual trying to take away the ability for unions to function in the state by not allowing the automatic deduction from paychecks. That was one of the big issues my first session. I'm a big supporter of labor, and I will work with labor once I get into office.
Let's say you win the nomination. How do you go up against Dan Patrick? What is your strategy?
I think Dan Patrick has made a lot of people angry throughout the state. I don't think that the vouchers that they passed are universally appreciated throughout the state because people know this takes money away from our public schools. I also know that there were over 600 people who came to the Capitol against his ban on THC last session. There were veterans who came. They were upset because they used THC, marijuana, what have you, as opposed to opioids. And they were angry with Dan Patrick for trying to take that away from them. There were business owners who said in 2019, we legalized hemp. They created business around this. We would be wiping out a $5 billion industry here in the state. There were moms who like their, I don't know, chewables or what have you, and they were angry as well. So a lot of people angry. A lot of people don't like the idea that Dan Patrick pushed the 10 Commandments on the classroom walls. This violates the separation of church and state. We pass so many laws that are unconstitutional, and then we spend time fighting them. There are so many lawsuits against laws that we have passed, and that's a waste of our resources. The lieutenant governor is not about local control. So we have a lot of local elected officials, mayors, city council members, county commissioners who aren't very happy with current leadership. They have tied the hands of local elected officials to get things done in their communities.
I'm curious, are you in this race because you see a vulnerability in Dan Patrick right now with voters, or are you in this race for other reasons?
I'm in this race because I have been on this path of trying to do good for the state of Texas. As a state representative over my 4 terms, I've gotten bills passed. I have passed drowning prevention, a violence prevention bill, food resiliency bill. But you know what? The really big things, funding our public schools appropriately and really supporting public schools instead of continually tearing them down, that to me is so foundational. And we haven't had leadership that is willing to support our public schools in a long time. And that's why I'm running.
You go back to it. Let me go back to education. If you could point out a 1, 2, 3 solution for public education, what would it be? Because we keep hearing it in a broad sense. We've got to correct public education. We know funding, but for practical, points that we could really accomplish to fix it, what would you say they are? 3.
There's been such a chilling effect, not just in K through 12, but also in higher ed. And I think that we've got to get back to letting our local decision makers make the decisions. And we have so much regulation. So reducing the regulation and letting local school boards and local university presidents and chancellors make the decisions. We used to have Senate committees that would help with the decision making at our public universities and colleges. And I think we need to go back to that. We need to reduce the amount of time spent on high stakes testing. We know that that is not helpful for our students and our teachers. And the funding, when we have the ability to have smaller class sizes, to have more resources for our teachers, our students are going to do better.
I would just like to know this. When we talk about the vouchers and everybody's saying, we're going to have like a private school-like atmosphere for our students. Why have we gone to vouchers when we could have just presented the private school kind of curriculum in the public school?
Exactly. That's my point
I was just
too.
wondering.
I think that we should put the resources so that our public schools can be, as good as they can be. What makes the difference? We were asked, or rather the private school advocate was asked in the hearings, what makes private schools so much better? Well, the small class sizes, the individualized attention. So that's what we need to be able to do in our public schools.
I want to remind everyone we are speaking with with Vikki Goodwin, who is a Texas state representative in the Democratic primary to be the candidate for lieutenant governor. A lot to get there to explain exactly the positioning of who we're talking with. If you'd like to join the conversation, give me a call, 713-440-8870. I'm looking at initiatives, things that you stand behind, as we've talked about already: public education, affordability and services, public safety, and also water environmental issues are 4 pretty major points that you're looking at. With all of them afterwards, I have a little note that says the cost. How are we going to pay for it? Looking at the finances of the state of Texas, are we allocating our monies correctly? How can we do a better job of it? And how does it fiscally benefit those of us in the state?
We can do a much better job. I am on the Appropriations Committee this session, and we underspent what we could spend by $4 billion. As a business owner, I know that we have to invest in our business to get a return, and investing in the people of the state of Texas is so important. Texas is terrible about creating these funds that are meant to do good, and then making it really difficult for those funds to be accessed. For example, the Flood Infrastructure Fund. If we had allowed that to be used in Kerrville, we might not have seen all of those deaths after the July 4th flood. We have a flood infrastructure fund, but unfortunately, the state of Texas said, okay, we'll give you 10% of what you need for your project. You have to come up with the other 90%. County of Kerr County. And they didn't have the money, so they didn't go forward with it. The same thing with the opioid abatement fund, that fund has grown over the last year as opposed to being used for treatment centers. We even had an emissions reduction program, the TERP fund, that didn't get used, and we had to pass a law saying use that money. So we have a lot of resources here in the state of Texas. We are a prosperous state, but we aren't spending our money the way that we need to. We also have Operation Lone Star that costs tens of billions of dollars. We ask the federal government to reimburse us because it's not our job to secure the border. So why are we spending billions of dollars and then asking the federal government to reimburse us? We should let the federal government do its job, and we should be providing resources to those cities and counties on the border so that they can do the job of securing their areas and helping them out when there is a surge. There has not been a surge in quite a long time, and yet we're still spending those resources down there.
A lot of people may not be aware, some are, of course, that the lieutenant governor position in the state of Texas is an extremely powerful position. It is a major player in policy and what happens in the state. But regardless of that, conventional wisdom would say, for the most part, it looks like Governor Abbott will be reelected. If you are the lieutenant governor and he is the governor, how do you work with him?
You know, the lieutenant governor has a lot of power. The lieutenant governor decides what bills come to the Senate floor and move to the governor's desk. So that's a lot of power to keep bad bills from even reaching the governor. The lieutenant governor has a huge say in what goes in our budget. And one of my commitments is not to pass a budget that has even $1 going to private schools. So the lieutenant governor really has a lot of power. I'm always open to working with people. I like to work in a collaborative manner, and I would like to believe I can work with the governor. It might be tough if it's still Governor Abbott, but you know, we'll make it work, and I will not send him the bills that go against my values.
Is it possible, though, in today's day and age, in especially Texas government, to have folks working across the aisle? Have the walls been built so strong and so tall that it's just butting heads against each other, and majority rules is just going to be what happens?
Because we lose out the public on that.
Yeah, you know, I think we should be listening to what the majority of Texans want. And I truly believe that the majority of Texans don't want a voucher program. The majority of Texans want us to treat marijuana like alcohol, regulate it, don't ban it. I think the majority of Texans have a lot of ideas that are different from what the current leadership is doing. And so I look forward to having an agenda that meets the demands of the public. And I also think that we should allow for citizen-led ballot initiatives. That's one of the bills that I filed. I think that we should have an independent redistricting commission. That's another bill that I have filed. There are so many issues that I look forward to addressing, and also campaign finance reform. It's crazy that the governor has a $100 million war chest, that Lieutenant Governor Patrick has a $40 million war chest. That shouldn't be allowed. We should have some campaign finance reform.
Yeah, to be able to win, if you get the nomination and you're there, not only do you have to bring in the Democratic voters, you've got to get the independents, you've got to get some crossover Republicans. How do you go about getting people to step away from party affinity and say, I'm listening to the candidate, this candidate speaks more to my needs as opposed to what the party is saying? How do you achieve that?
I think we have to go out into the community and listen to them and tell them this is what I am trying to do. You know, over the years that I've been in the legislature, I've been able to go out to various communities. Let me give you an example. West Texas, pretty heavily Republican area, but there's a rancher out there who came to the Capitol to advocate for plugging wells because the oil industry and the fracking have really damaged the land out there. There's this thing called Lake Beamer, which is really a toxic lake that resulted as a result of an old oil well that came uncapped. And so you're talking about Republicans that care about environmental issues because they see the damage that's being done. And I think saying, hey, I've been out there, I've seen the problem, I want to work on the problem with you. Water is such a huge issue throughout the state, and that's not a partisan issue unless we make it a partisan issue. So I think it's by traveling the state, getting in front of people, letting them know that I want to solve problems and not make the problems worse.
We just finished an interview with the University of Houston on what were the major concerns for the Houston residents. And one of those things was public safety. Where do you stand on our challenges with public safety right now?
So, I think when people have opportunities in life, when they have a solid education, they have something to hope for and to work towards, there's going to be less crime. I support our law enforcement, but I also support making sure that they're doing the right thing. Right now, we are forcing, the state has a law that says our local law enforcement has to work with ICE. And I've seen that as a problem in my area, where a woman who was involved in domestic violence called the police because her aggressor was in her home. They came and they ended up picking her up and deporting her and her 5-year-old U.S. citizen daughter. And so now you're breaking trust with the communities. They see that happen. They're not going to call the police when there's domestic violence. So I think we've got to address that collaboration or cooperation with our law enforcement and ICE at a time when ICE is operating outside the bounds of law. We saw what happened with Alex Preddy and Renee Good up in Minnesota, and that has a lot of people scared here in Texas. We've got to build back that trust. I'm afraid right now we've really torn down the trust between law enforcement and our public.
Accountability in law enforcement always seems to ring out anti-law enforcement. How do you make the distinction between the two?
As a legislator, I pass laws, and so I want to make sure that we have people who are enforcing the laws. I believe in law enforcement, but we also need to make sure that they're getting the training they need to be effective in their jobs, to be partners with the community and not adversarial.
Let me just go back to one thing you said. You were talking about border security, I believe, and if I'm misquoting you, please correct me here, that, that isn't our responsibility, it's federal government's responsibility there. And my concern then is, where do you stand on what we should be doing as a state when it comes to border security?
Well, personally, I think we ought to be listening to those representatives who live on the border, the city council, county commissioners, county judges, and state representatives along the border. We've had Representative Eddie Morales and Representative Richard Raymond trying to pass laws to improve our situation. We need the workforce. In fact, the building industry really heavily relies on our immigrant workforce. But right now, they're afraid to come to work. We talk about housing affordability, and when your workforce is afraid to come to work, that's going to have a real impact on increasing prices of our housing. It slows down the building process, which means supply shrinks, and we still have high demand. But, I think that the way to address immigration is to listen to what the communities along the border are saying. I could go on and on.
Well, we won't make you go on and on because, unfortunately, we have run out of time. But thank you so much for joining us and talking with us today. Texas State Representative Vikki Goodwin is a candidate for the Democratic position to run for lieutenant governor. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being with us on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me here. Have a good day.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's time for Last Minute Plans. Find out what we're up to, and we want to know what you're up to. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Text or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Hey, it's Francis Lamb, host of The Splendid Table. This week, it's a live event with the close-knit food scene of Indianapolis. From a pioneering prosecutor turned restaurateur to a pair of young proteges carrying on the legacy of a beloved baker, we're talking the past, present, and future of the indie food world. It's coming up on The Splendid Table.
Listen Sunday at noon.
Next time on Climate One, Congress approved billions in federal grants to help disadvantaged communities address the climate crisis. But Trump's EPA is withholding that money.
Without this funding, it is really hard to provide the kind of services that we so desperately need in our world right now.
The fight over grants from the EPA on the next Climate One.
Sunday morning at 6 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. With 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro. Introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manouse and guest host Doris Childress.
Oh, you know what it is? It's the last segment and the end of the week, which means last minute plans. We want to hear what you're thinking. What do you have planned for the weekend? What do you want to share with us? What is something you know that's going on that we may not know about, but you think everyone should know about? Give us a call right now, 713-440-8870, and you can share with the audience what's going on out there, where we should be putting our attention this weekend. Okay, there's the plug. Give us a call right now, 713-440-8870. So, Doris, what do you got planned?
Ernie, what are you going to do?
Well,
I'm going to turn the table.
Okay, we've been talking a lot on the show. I've been having health caregiver concerns. I don't have somebody for half of the hours my mom is allotted for caregivers. So I've been spending a lot of my time playing caregiver. So I've been home taking care of mom. So this weekend, it's an Ernie Mom weekend. So we're going to be together all weekend. So I'll take her out to eat a couple times. We'll have some friends over for a movie night. I don't have any big get out there plans, but
it's a sweet weekend.
It is sweet.
You need to have
spend
those
time
every
with
now and then.
Mom. Yeah, and you also need to have time where you don't have those every weekend.
That's true too. That is true too.
We don't always win with that. What do you have planned this weekend?
Well, it's Black History Month, so I think I'm going to watch a few PBS documentaries. Yes, there's one from Africa to America, and then I'm going to watch the Black Church. There's about 3 or 4 Henry Louis Gates pieces that I'm going to watch. So just kind of brush up on some Black history and enjoy that. And then we're going to have African Heritage Day at my church.
Oh, cool. What do they do there for that?
Well, we have this really unique litany that we read, and of course we sing songs, but sometimes we have the Taste of Africa. And like
I haven't seen my invitation to the Taste of Africa.
Oh, I guess I should invite you.
You should. I'd taste anything.
I'll have something for you to wear, too. And then I'm going to wear something really cool and neat.
Yeah. To go back to the Black Church, it's an amazing series, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we really, I'm very proud that we were able to show that on PBS and it's there. And so especially if you have passport.
We do some great stuff here.
Yeah, we do. Other folks are chiming in on what they are doing. Where is it? I lost it already. I love this one from my British computer guy. Hello, my British computer guy. Good to see you there. Weekend plans. I like this one. Sleep in tomorrow, then a wedding to attend on Sunday. And he also hopes that the newlyweds have great weather.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Going on around town, Space Center Houston is still in the Lunar New Year celebration state of mind. So they're going to have their Lunar New Year celebration.
Do you know what year it is? The year of the
horse?
I was right.
Why, did you have a debate with someone about
it?
Yes.
A couple of people kept telling me cat. I said, no, horse.
Yeah, I believe it's horse.
We
had them on. They brought me a little horse I could hold. So
Did you get money?
The little envelopes. Do you remember back many years ago on Weeknight Edition, we did a segment on it, and somebody gave me a little envelope with money and said, put it under your pillow, and you will get a wife in the next year. Didn't work. Did not work for me, but it was nice.
But you spent the money.
Of course I spent the money. I go and got a soda with it. It was just $1. Okay, what else is going on? Of course, back to Black History Story Time is going to be happening at the Children's Museum, and their community engagement director will be there. It's going to take families on a journey through the pages of an experience that honors the rich tapestry of African American heritage. All ages are welcome. That's from 1 to 2 p.m. on Saturday.
I think it's really important you get your kids involved at a young age in these historical moments, in these celebrations. A little tidbit about your girls, who are my daughters. You know what?
You get yourself in more trouble referring to your children and me.
Uncle Ernie, but they have a piece, or they had a piece. They were in second and third grade. They actually had a piece to hang in the African American Museum of Art in Philadelphia, a national museum, because they were in a quilting group. And it actually hung there. So every time they have a resume or someone says, tell me something you don't know about me, they'll always go, hey, I have artwork that's been shown in a national museum.
That is awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah. They were little quilters.
Do we tell our old story yet again about you and me and your baby? We'll get to that in a minute. Listeners. I just want to let you know that we got a couple calls online. See, this is how we're going to hang you on to the next thing. We'll get to this story in a minute. But first, I'm curious what Anna in the 3rd Ward has going on with her last-minute plans. Anna, what's on your mind?
Hey, yeah. On Sunday, there is an art market happening from 1 to 6 p.m. at Eureka Heights. It's a new group that's put together, and the group is called Atypical Art. So you're going to have not quite your typical art there. There's also going to be the first 50 guests to attend the market on Saturday will receive a free grab bag. And inside the grab bag, you're going to get a little bit of original art, but also like some stickers and other goodies.
You know, I'm going to ask Anna, what is non-typical art?
You know, like if you think of like, what am I going to put in my living room, like a tree or a landscape? Non-typical. So like a little more maybe macabre, a little like maybe assemblage art, possibly clowns, maybe some fiber craft.
Interesting. Okay, one more time. Where at and when?
And it is Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m. at Eureka Heights.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Anna.
Love that, but no clowns for me.
No clowns. I know. When she said clowns, I thought, oh, that's almost as bad as birds for you. 713-440-8870. Joyce from Clear Lake, what are your last-minute plans?
Well, we'll be busy early tomorrow morning from 9 to noon at the University of Houston Clear Lake for Engineers in Real Life.
Ooh.
And this is an opportunity for students from K through to meet engineers from every aspect of engineering, aerospace, mechanical, biomedical, you name it, we've got it. They'll have some great hands-on activities for the students. And it's an opportunity for kids to ask hard questions and not get talked to, just to interact one-on-one with a group of engineers to find out what is engineering really like.
Cool.
That's good.
I love positioning it as engineers in real life, what they're really like, the inside story. Joyce, one more time, where and when? Remind everyone.
That's University of Houston Clear Lake tomorrow from 9 to noon, and everybody's welcome.
Joyce, thank you very much for sharing that with us. On Sunday, also, Houston Quinceañera Expo is going to be happening at the George R. Brown Convention Center. That's from noon to 5 p.m. You were saying you have a little dream in there. What's your dream?
I've always wanted to wear one of those dresses, but I almost did. I went to Aldine High School, and we have this thing called Coronation. And you remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a chance to wear this yellow dress I picked out, and it had that kind of feel to it. I could not sit down. I love that dress.
Also going on Sunday, it's the Houston Maca. Is that how you say Maca?
Don't even ask me.
Maca Market at Ironworks HTX, a free event. Where? Maca? Matcha?
Is it matcha?
Matcha or maca?
Matcha.
Well, somebody will correct me.
Mm-hmm.
Lovers of this drink, this creation, they can support local authors, and we'll see from over 80 vendors. And again, it's maca. Good, I got that right.
Maca. Okay, have you had it? Is it good?
Yes, it's good.
I've never had it. My daughter drinks it all the time, but I've...
Yeah, aren't you supposed to drink it like really, really hot?
Oh.
And it's supposed to have... Well, anyway, first 100 that arrive get a free tote bag. That seems to be a going trend. Gifts for the first 100.
Just run around the city and
get
get tote bags this weekend.
The event will go on from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's at Ironworks HTX. That's Houston. Also going on, I'm trying to keep track of all. I'm reading over on one side and looking at the other. You know, $1 Million Quartet at the Hobby Center, Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet with the Houston Symphony at Jones Hall, comedians in town, a lot's going on. But you know what? We're out of time here.
Oh, it goes by
Doris
so
Childress,
fast.
what a joy to have you sit in with me today. Always a pleasure.
No problem. Always here for you.
I didn't even give the story about our baby.
Oh.
People will have to
We'll
wait till
save
the next
it for
time
next
you're here.
time.
And until next time, we'll be back on Monday. Don't forget, Best of Hello Houston this weekend. And I'll see you all back here on Monday.
Hello
Thanks.
and goodbye, Houston.
Hello Houston here on News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Tonight on TV 8, after a new episode of Party Politics at 8, it's an American Masters double feature with music icon Roberta Flack at 8.